But one thing that is certain is that string theory is already showing us that the universe may be a lot stranger than any of us ever imagined.
For example, string theory says we're surrounded by hidden dimensions, mysterious places beyond the familiar three-dimensional space we know.
People who've said that there are extra dimensions of space have been labeled as, you know, crackpots or people who are bananas. I mean, what do you think there are extra dimensions? Well, string theory really predicts it.
What we think of as our universe could just be one small part of something much bigger.
Perhaps we live on a membrane, a three-dimensional membrane that floats inside a higher dimensional space.
There could be entire worlds right next to us, but completely invisible.
These other worlds would, in a very literal sense, be parallel universes. This isn't a particularly exotic or strange notion.
For decades, physicists believed that the tiniest bits inside an atom were point particles. Flying around the outside were the electrons, and inside were protons and neutrons, which were made up of quarks. But string theory says that what we thought were indivisible particles are actually tiny vibrating strings.
It's nothing really mystical. It's a really tiny string. It either closes into its little circle or it has endpoints, but it's just a little string.
Before M-theory, strings seemed to operate in a world with 10 dimensions. These included one dimension of time, the three familiar space dimensions, as well as 6 extra dimensions, curled up so tiny that they're completely invisible.
Well, we think these extra dimensions exist because they come out of the equations of string theory. Strings need to move in more than 3 dimensions. And that was a shock to everybody, but then we learned to live with it.
But M-theory would go even further, demanding yet another spatial dimension, bringing the grand total to 11 dimensions.
We know that there have to be 11 dimensions for this theory to make sense. So there must be 11 dimensions. We only see 3 plus 1 of them. How is that possible?
For most of us, it's virtually impossible to picture the extra higher dimensions. I can't. And it's not surprising. Our brains evolved sensing just the 3 spatial dimensions of everyday experience. So, how can we get a feel for them? One way is to go to the movies. We're all familiar with the real world having 3 spatial dimensions. That is, anywhere I go, I can move left, right, back, forth, or up, down. But in the movies, things are a bit different. Even though the characters on a movie screen look 3-dimensional, they actually are stuck in just 2 dimensions. There is no back, forth on a movie screen. That's just an optical illusion. To really move in the back-forth dimension, I'd have to step out of the screen. And sometimes, moving into a higher dimension can be a useful thing to do. So, dimensions all have to do with the independent directions in which you can move. They're sometimes called degrees of freedom. The more dimensions or degrees of freedom you have, the more you can do. That's right. And if there really are 11 dimensions, then strings can do a lot more too.
People found fairly soon that there were objects that lived in these theories, which weren't just strings, but were larger than that. They actually looked like membranes or surfaces.
The extra dimension Witten added allows a string to stretch into something like a membrane, or a brain for
for short. A brain could be three-dimensional, or even more. And with enough energy, a brain could grow to an enormous size. Perhaps even as large as a universe. This was a revolution in string theory. The existence of giant membranes and extra dimensions would open up a startling new possibility. That our whole universe is living on a membrane inside a much larger, higher dimensional space. It's almost as if we were living inside a loaf of bread. Our universe might be like a slice of bread, just one slice in a much larger loaf that physicists sometimes call the bulk. And if these ideas are right, the bulk may have other slices, other universes that are right next to ours, in effect, parallel universes. Not only would our universe be nothing special, but we could have a lot of neighbors. Some of them could resemble our universe. They might have matter and planets and, who knows, maybe even beings of a sort. Others could certainly be a lot stranger. They might be ruled by completely different laws of physics. Now, all of these other universes would exist within the extra dimensions of M-theory, dimensions that are all around us. Some even say they might be right next to us, less than a millimeter away. But if that's true, why can't I see them or touch them?
If you have a brain living in a higher dimensional space and your particles, your atoms, cannot get off the brain, it's like trying to reach out, but you can't touch anything. It might as well be on the other end of the universe.